Heritage Cast 22. I'm delighted to be joined by a player who, despite making just 42 appearances for Hull Kingston Rovers, will go down as one of the most popular players in recent memory, with him playing a major role in the resurgence of the Robins. A scorer and creator of memorable tries, Ethan Ryan is a player who plays at full tilt with no quarter given. In this Heritage Cast, Ethan discusses his journey from amateur club West Bowling to the heights of professional rugby league with Hull KR. And remember, there's also another 21 Heritage Cast for you to listen to, with the Red Robin podcast talking to the likes of Justin Morgan, John Doherty, Dave Hall, and Michael Dobson, to name just a few. These are all available from all the main podcast providers. Just search Red Robin Podcast. Great to have you on the Red Robin podcast, Heritage Cast. A player who I know is a firm favourite with the supporters. Of course, you've moved on to pastures new, but of course, we want to hear about your story at Hull Kingston Rovers and how you got into rugby league in the first place. I mean, Ethan, when you look back on your career and you look at where you started, how did you get into rugby? Why didn't you play football, cricket? Because in the north, there's plenty of opportunities to play plenty of different sports, isn't there? Why was it rugby league for you, Ethan?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate. Appreciate it. Good to sort of talk a bit about it. But now, I first started playing rugby initially when I was in school. Played a bit of tag rugby, and eventually took it on to play for my local team. I lived in Queensbury with my mum and dad, and me and my best mate Brad, his dad was Brendan Hill. We played at Queensbury, so I went and tagged along. Brendan's other lad, Danny, he was coaching, so it sort of made that a little bit easier, the sort of transition. And he told me that I should start playing, so that's what we did, and played an age group above what I should have done to start with. Couldn't have an age group. We were struggling for like numbers and stuff at that time with Queensbury, so that's what. I think I played in under 13s, but played in the under 14s. We did that for about 2 years, and then unfortunately that team folded. And I needed somewhere to go and play, and a lot of the lads who were on scholarships and stuff were at West Bowling, and my mate Brady went and played there, so I did what I did before and just went and followed him. Went down to play for West Bowling, and I think my first season with them were under 15s. I never, to be honest, I never really had any like intentions of ever making it to any sort of level, because I wasn't really that good, if I'm being completely honest. I don't know. It's one of those things where I just gradually just took on board things, learned, and just sort of gone with it. And I think it was about a season into my time at West Bowling. The coach at the time, Frank Levy, he's done bits at Bradford and Keighley and stuff, so and in the service area and stuff like that. He got me it was like a scholarship at Keighley Cougars, if I remember rightly. And I did that for a year, and then he got me on. And then when I was playing there, I then got moved on to the Bradford Bulls under 16s scholarship. And then it was a bit of a weird one, really, a bit of a roller coaster, because then Bradford actually let me go after that. They didn't sign me for their academy team, just told me that they keep an eye out, keep monitoring me. So then I went back to Keighley, played reserves, which were interesting, really, because back then the reserves comp were really like it were quite physical, and I were only 17 at the time, and it were like you're playing against teams that have got like some pretty good players in, and I learned a lot. Every week was sort of a very, very tough game, and you're on receiving end of quite a high scoreline some weeks, but I did quite a lot of. It was good to be sort of involved in such a standard at such a young age, if that makes sense. But so then did that for a year, and then I had a bit of a decision to make, because Bradford wanted to sign me back on a trial for the academy. So I could either stay at 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗴𝗏 or go and have a chance at a trial in the second year of the academy, which is what I did. And then I managed to get through the trial, get a contract, and then I signed for the year after. And then that's when I got a contract offer for a year in the Bradford Bulls first team. So yeah, it was a bit of it wasn't always smooth sailing. It was a bit of quite a rocky road, to be honest. But like I said earlier, it was just sort of one of those things where you take on board things that have been said, try and improve with the coach you've got at the time, and I think that's what allowed me to sort of come back to, well, first of all get back to Bradford, and then sort of managed to get into the first team there.
Yeah, I mean, I look at my lad now, he's only 7 and he's playing and he sort of gravitates to the wing, to the fullback area. Did you naturally sort of find yourself in that position? Because obviously, if you look at you now, you're probably not prop size, are you? So was you always that size, and did you sort of just naturally gravitate to them areas of the pitch?
Yeah, I think, well, when I first started playing, I was dead skinny, really fast, really skinny. Not what's changed really, but yeah, it were. I always sort of got put on the wing, and then I don't really know when I started playing fullback. I think I started playing fullback at West Bowling, and it were when I don't really know. I can't really recall when it was, but then I just started playing a couple of positions, and across my whole time in like the academy, and even my time at Bradford, I got played in quite a few positions, whether it was centre, wing, fullback. I've done quite obviously wing. I'd say wing's my sort of main position, but given the past couple of years at Rovers, especially, like I really enjoy playing fullback, and I'd consider like wanting to move there permanently, to be honest, because it's one of those you get a bit more freedom whilst playing and stuff, but yeah, they were sort of always my positions, because in terms of like skill, obviously you need a lot of that playing halfback and stuff like that, and they were never really my strong points. I could catch really high kicks, and I think that's why wing and fullback were sort of the ones that I got plonked in when I was a bit younger.
Yeah, and you're not the only Robin to play at West Bowling. I mean, we'll come on to that about when he signed for Hull Kingston Rovers. But 𝗟𝗡𝗞𝗦, Rowan Mills, Matty Staunton, I think Joe Keys as well. I mean, were they at West Bowling as well?
Keysy won, but the rest of the boys
was he?
No, he didn't. Just the 4 of us. But yeah, I played with Minnie actually in the same team, because Minnie was the same. He played an age group above. Joe and I played for Queensborough. He played at West Bowling, in the same team, like age group, but even though we were both playing a year above. And then when I moved to West Bowling, I think Minnie moved to Siddle, and then he came back. I think it was under 17s or 18s, and we actually played together then at West Bowling, because they were an age group then for us, obviously, at that club. So we played together, and then obviously Stoz and Rowan were a few years younger than us, but yeah, it's a good club. Like you just look at some of the players that actually come through there. Obviously, Jake Truman played there, 𝗟𝗡𝗞𝗦. There's a load that you can reel off, and like I say, it's a really good amateur club. And then at the time, sort of when Queensborough folded and that opportunity came to go there, it was probably a blessing in disguise, really. Do you know what I mean? Just because of the calibre of the club and the attention it gets.
I was going to say, was West Bowling in that area? Was that the club to be at? If you wanted to really, if you was that good, is that the club that would either come in for you, or that's the club you wanted to play at?
Yeah, there were a few dotted around the area, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't just everyone played there. But I remember when I first came, there were a lot of their lads there. They were already on scholarships with Bradford. I think, if I'm remembering back, I swear there were about 8 or 10 lads from West Bowling who were in the under-15s. That were when I were at 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗴𝗏. So I sort of saw it as that's what I can sort of strive to get to. Do you know what I mean? And like I said, I think that's when I started actually taking rugby and thinking, oh, we're a good team here, and I'm actually a part of that good team, playing well, and sort of people around you telling you that you could probably go that one step further, and eventually that's what we did.
Yeah, and you'll have seen it as well, Ethan, especially being at Rovers now with some of the young kids who are coming out of the academy into the first team. I mean, when you're 16, 17, 18, you sort of have to make some tough decisions, don't you? Whether it's college, A-levels, apprenticeships, or whether you think you actually might be able to make it in rugby and make the step up to professional. I mean, did you have other opportunities to maybe do something different, or did it just sort of naturally the rugby pathway come your way?
Well, to be honest, I was quite lucky, I think. I mean, I'm not sure if it's running differently now, but whilst being in the academy, I'm sure you had to be doing something else. You had to be either studying college on with the college course that they provided, or working, or in some sort of further education. And I went to sixth form, and I managed to go through sixth form, get my A-levels, and then I went to uni after that. So I don't know, it was always something I did alongside as well. So it's weird. And I have this conversation with my wife, well, not a lot, but it comes up sometimes because she's recently got a new job, and we say it all the time that whilst other lads, when we were like teenagers, went out and got jobs, I was in education, so I never actually did anything when it comes to actually working. So all I've ever done really is rugby, which is strange to think really, because I'm like I said earlier, I'm 27, and it's weird that I haven't actually done anything. Do you know what I mean? It's really strange. Because I know a few of my mates have done, they've had jobs, but like I said, I went to uni for 5 years, got a degree instead of doing that, and I managed to do it alongside rugby, which I'm really happy that I did, sort of thing.
Yeah, and you'll experience that firsthand at Bradford, of course, sort of a downturn in fortunes for the club in terms of where there was at the time, players part-time, etc., etc. You know, people who were maybe on tools and stuff like that. I mean, what kind of environment was that like for you, a young lad to go into, trying to sort of forage his way into the game? But obviously there was experienced pros there as well, and a club who was looking to rebuild and get back to hopefully Super League one day.
Yeah, so when I were in the academy, they were still in Super League, Bradford, and then that's when my first year, well, my breakthrough year, almost like I was training with the first team and the academy sort of thing. So my first year, that's what the first year in the champ, and then that was the £1 million game when we got to the £1 million game. But coming into that squad, you just thought that they were going to instantly bounce back up. It was one of those things. They'd get to, I think it was the middle eights at the time, and then the £1 million game. And when we lost that game, it was just sort of like a wow, you know what I mean? You didn't know if that was going to be the one and only chance, and all that sort of stuff. And then that's when I sort of come into the team that next year. But that next year, I'm not sure if it was that year or the year after, when obviously the money troubles started, and then, like I said, it went from being like a full-time training through the day thing, switching it straight over to the part-time, where you're sharing, like, I mean, I managed to stay full-time through it all, which were because they had like a mixture. But yeah, you shared. Then it went from like, but we still trained on like afternoons and evenings. So it were a weird one. It was like a weird shift. I think I did 2 years of both at Bradford, where 2 of the years were full-time, 2 of the years were part-time. But yeah, it was a strange one.
But I mean, fortunate for you as well. And obviously it speaks, it tells a lot, doesn't it, how much they thought of you at the time that you was on a pro deal. And obviously, I mean, selfishly, you'd say you benefited from that downturn in fortunes. But, I think Bradford's one of the clubs that we all hope get back to Super League and back. I mean, I remember when they was playing Leeds and the derbies, and the game, it was absolutely huge, wasn't it? Bradford Bulls, Leeds Rhinos, one of the biggest clubs around. So we all hope that they get there. But ultimately, that downturn in fortune gave you the opportunity to get into the first team and play. And I mean, when you did play, wow, you took your opportunity. Was it a seamless transition into first team rugby, or did you find it difficult, or was you almost just thrust into it?
It was tough. It was really tough because I had J.J. Lawes as my coach at the time, and it were very tough coach to be under, sort of thing. We didn't always see eye to eye sometimes, but ultimately he gave me my debut and my first chance to play.
That's really interesting. I was going to say, because I mean, J.J. Lawes, you didn't see eye to eye. How did you do it? Because he's a player who's been there, done it. He's. I can imagine he'd be very difficult to. I'm sure he's put his opinion across to you, but for a young lad like yourself, who's sort of foraging his way into the first team, to not go toe to toe, but put your point across and be listened to. I mean, that must have been a difficult time, or did you?
I mean, I was sort of the quietest one there. I didn't really say much, you know what I mean? I just got told. It was one of those things where I didn't want to. I just wanted to. If he had something to say to me, I'd take it on board and listen. I got bollocked a few times, which were just part of it. I think being it, and I know that now because obviously we've got young lads in our team, and it's one of them things they almost get like this. Like stick sometimes, you know what I mean? They do. It's just one of those things. It's almost like an easy out to bollock them sometimes, which is a shame. But I get it now. I get why that happened to me a little bit. But there were me and one other lad who got signed from the academy to the first team. There were only two of us that year, and Jimmy really loved this other lad who I come through with, and I had to sort of stay and be patient to make my debut, and then that's when it started being a bit of a whirlwind because I think it was about 3/4 of the way through the year. I didn't really play. I think I played twice, and that's when Rowan Smith came in to Bradford, and then I got told. I think at the time as well, I were only on a 1-year deal, and I got told that I'd be going out on loan to get some game time. So we're looking for clubs, looking for loan moves, and then I actually got the opportunity to play in a game after he told me that he were going to loan me out, Rowan, and then I played, for the rest of the year, which were one of those. It's like you said, I sort of took my opportunity. We're both fans when it came to it. We were playing some really good stuff at the back end of that year, and I think if stuff would have been a bit different, we could have probably even pushed for promotion that year, which is a shame. But it were good because I didn't think I was going to play much, and then I had a really strong end to the year. Ended up signing another 2 years, but then obviously that next pre-season when administration happened. So it were good, but for a very short period.
They're funny coaches, aren't they? Because you never know whether you're doing the right thing. You don't know if you're doing the wrong thing. You're almost left guessing at you, and you go about your business trying to just be natural to yourself, but you're never quite sure. And sometimes you think you're doing something that they don't like, or sometimes you do something that you think they won't like and they like it. And it's a bit of a guessing game, isn't it, with coaches sometimes?
Yeah, it is, and I think it's got a little bit easier with age, but it's one of those things. I've under every coach that I've ever had, I've tried to adapt the best I can, and because ultimately they're your boss, and if you're not playing how they want you to play, then the face don't fit. Do you know what I mean? So it's one of those, like, I've had quite a lot of coaches now. I think I've been playing. This will be my 9th year now coming into. But in that time, I've had a lot of coaches. So, and I'd say under quite a lot of them, I've managed to sort of mold. I mean, not too many things change, but I've managed to just mold into their systems and almost try and push myself to the front of the queue.
Yeah, I mean, signed for the Robins in 2020, and it's no wonder, is it? I mean, 2016 Bradford, 14 appearances, 16 tries. 2017, 23 appearances, 17 tries, and that 2018 season, I mean, 30 appearances, 36 tries. 2019, 31 appearances, 19 tries. I mean, it's no wonder he came to the attention of a number of Super League clubs. It was Rovers who picked, I think, a few others to get you signing. I mean, then times at Bradford, when you look back, obviously as a young lad, scoring tries, playing regularly, it must have been a real highlight for you to be able to do that. And let's not forget that assist. You know, what's gone down in folklore. I mean, if anyone wants to YouTube Ethan Ryan's assist, I mean, good times, fantastic memories, and ultimately it's what's propelled you onto your career now.
Yeah, 100%. And we got, I mean, when we got relegated to League One, it were almost, I had the opportunity to leave actually and go to Leigh. And at the time, I was with a different agent to what I am now, and we got that deal organised. But I were in a bit of a situation where, because Leigh got relegated from Super League that year, so it were either help Bradford get back up to the Championship and then hopefully try to push them to Super League, or do I go to Leigh, who are going to be playing the Championship, where I believed that Bradford were going to be in a year's time. So it was a really like tough decision to make, and I didn't really know what to do, and I only had a very short time to decide what to do, because I'd already signed at Leigh. So, but when relegation happens, your contract needs to be renegotiated and stuff like that. But I ultimately decided to stay with Bradford, and then that year was, well, looking back and looking at my career since and all that sort of stuff, it's one that I'll always be really, really fond of. It were like a really good group of lads, and it were weird that it were a league where like one week you'd be playing a really, really tough game, like say against York. Newcastle were really good that year. Oldham had a good team, and then the other week you'd be playing against a team where you could put 100 points on it. Like, it was so weird, but it were a really good year. A lot of good memories with a lot of great guys. You know what I mean? So, but like you said, after that, after that year, I went with my new agent, and then I managed to have another quite strong year in the Champ. I think we just missed out on a playoff place that year, and then a couple more things happened with the club, which I mean, I were out of contract anyway, and I just wasn't really happy with how it was going in terms of stuff off of the field. It were always a bit of a guessing game as to when you were going to get paid, if it were going to be on time, if things were a little bit dodgy, you know what I mean? And ultimately, when I got my new agent, he said, "Look, come May the 1st, mate, I'll have a Super League offer for you. Like, I'm very, very confident of that." And so I rode with that a little bit, and I sort of, Bradford wanted to keep me and stuff, and then I sort of waited till May the 1st to see if I'd get any offers, and I did. So again, it were another really hard choice to make. Do I stay with Bradford, and ultimately it's my team that I supported when I was a kid, and do you know what I mean? Like, it was a lot of emotional attachment, so it were a really tough decision. But looking back now, 4 years later, it's obviously one that I'm glad I've made, because I've managed to play for Rovers for 4 years, and obviously play Super League, play at Wembley. So like, it's those things that you sort of look back on, and you are glad that you've done it, and you always keep an eye on Bradford. I do anyway, to see, and you hope them all the best, sort of thing. Yeah,
of course. And you made the move to Rovers in 2020. I mean, did it smooth the path, the fact that you weren't the only Bradford player to be moving over? There was already, Minchella, Joe Keys, Madotti, Staunton, Milnes. Was that, there's a big thing about the Bradford bus. Did that make it a lot easier for you to move over to the Robins?
Well, it was weird, because at first none of them were moving. So initially, I think I signed with Hull, I think at the beginning of June, and at that time,
Ethan, it's never Hull.
Sorry, mate.
I'm messing. It's never, yeah.
I get it. But nah, I signed with Rovers at I think it was in June, and it were them boys were still all in contract.
Yeah.
So I ultimately made that decision based on well, like I say, it
personal to you. So
it were a really tough one, yeah. And then it got to the end of the year, and I was still I was going to play for Ireland, and I was still under the impression that I was the only one going, and I think so were everyone else. And then I think something happened within the club with Bradford, which allowed players to leave, or something to do with the contracts, that where they could leave if they wanted to leave. And I'm not sure if Rovers ended up paying a fee for the other lads. I'm not too sure, but yeah. So they ended up. I think Keezy and Minnie had the same agent at the time, and I think Anne, Rowan, and Stozza, they all had the same agent, which was the same as mine. And it was weird. My wife were giving me and Keezy a lift to the airport to go fly out with Ireland to. I think we were going over to Spain to play them, and he said it in car to me. He goes, "Oh, I might be signing at Hull, well, Rovers." And I went, "What?" I was like, it were a bit of a shock. I thought he was joking. Like I didn't believe him. And then he was being deadly serious, and he said, "I think Minnie is too." And then out completely out of blue, there were five other lads who obviously who came with me, and it made me feel a lot better because I was knowing that a lot of my mates are going over with me, so it made definitely like day one of pre-season, all that sort of stuff, meeting a new team. It made all that a lot easier. But we got told off when we actually, like, first couple of weeks, because we always used to sit together in changing rooms, or when we went for breakfast and all that sort of stuff. And Tony told us that we wanted to sit together and stuff. It was funny, but we were just sticking together. Do you know what I mean at the time? And if you look back from that day one to what, like, we hate each other now, sick at sight of each other. Do you know what I mean? But nah, it were good that I had all them, and obviously we all travelled over together and stuff. So it were very, very fond memories.
Yeah, I mean, also, I mean, fast forwarding a little bit, the fact that players, I think Minchella, I think Matty moved over, Rowan Milnes moved over to Hull. I think the club made a big thing of it, but you must have had some laughs in that car on the way from Bradford to Hull. But how sick of it did you get as well? Because I hate driving, whether it's 30 minutes, never mind driving an hour and a half down the road, and an hour and a half back.
The thing is, I think it helps with who you drive with. And
who was the driver?
Well, we all swapped.
You all swapped?
Yeah, we all took it in turns. It was like a rotation. So, but ultimately, I think that's why Minnie, Stoz, and Rowan, they all moved over, because I think the travelling just got a little bit too much for them. Like they didn't like it. I think that the pre-season, I'm not sure what year it was. I think it was the year we got to the semi-final of
20 it'll be 2021, won't it?
Yeah, that year. So it was that year, I think Minnie decided that he didn't really like the travel and stuff, and the other boys agreed, and so they looked at moving over. But just before I signed with Rovers, I moved into a house, and I don't know, we were sort of happy where we were, and it's 10 minutes from my mum and dad's, it's 10 minutes from Hall's mum and dad's, so it were a tough one, really. We didn't really know what to do, and yeah, it were a weird one. And I thought the length of deals I were on and all that sort of stuff, I thought it wasn't really right for me. Otherwise I would have done, but ultimately we decided to stay. And listen, I got used to the driving. I'm not going to lie. It just became a thing where you just get on with it. And obviously it helps with the people you've got in your bus. Like this year we had me, George King, Sam Wood, and Phoenix, and a great bus. Like every day is a laugh. Do you know what I mean? It really is, and it makes it a whole lot easier. And like if you were doing it every day by yourself, that's a different story, because that'd be really hard. but the people around you make that bearable.
Yeah, I mean, it must be a laugh. If Phoenix, is he driving?
Very poorly, but yeah.
No wonder it's a laugh then.
Yeah, so we had to actually pick Phoenix up for quite a while when he first signed at the club. He rode his bike to a meet point that was just off at motorway in Morley, and then we picked him up every day, and then we told him, look, eventually, mate, you're gonna have to start doing your lessons and getting your driving test done, because this ain't gonna carry on. And he did, to be fair, when we got on with it. And yeah, he's driving now, but there's been a few close calls with him.
What a character, absolute character. I mean, that first season, Ethan, at the Robins, I mean, coincided with COVID. I mean, you've got, a fantastic move, Super League, elite level sport, and then COVID comes and hits us. What a strange old season that was, wasn't it? I mean, on a personal level, how did you cope with the fact? I mean, what was it? 4 months you weren't allowed to play rugby league, but it wasn't just that as well, was it? Because we was all gripped with our families, worried about what might happen, and the fact also that your job is in such a public space and such a contact sport where you physically with people. We're all told not to be close to anybody. It must have been a really funny time for you.
Yeah, it was. It was tough as well, because just before lockdown, my dad were ill, so it were a weird time for me. We're locked down and COVID and stuff, and I didn't enjoy it at all. I know a lot of people might have liked the fact that they were off for a long time, but it were, looking back now, it wasn't something that I really enjoyed, to be honest. And so when we come back to training, when it all resumed, I were really happy. That's what ultimately, what I wanted to do, and what I'd signed for that year and all that sort of stuff. So I think coming back then was really positive for me afterwards. But yeah, it were I think a weird time for everyone, wasn't it? It were one of those you can't really imagine it ever happening, and it did. So it were definitely a weird one.
Yeah, but during that season, you made your try-scoring debut for the Robins against Wigan. I mean, hit the ground running. I suppose that's what any player wants to do, especially playing your position, is to make a mark on the debut. And how did you find the step up in terms of pre-season and then going into a Super League environment? Was it an easy transition, or did you find it difficult?
So the first year was really weird, because obviously we'd gone from, like I said earlier, training in the afternoons and evenings. So we've gone from doing that to us getting up at 5 a.m. every morning, getting in a car, getting up motorway. And I'm not going to lie, that first year travelling were the toughest one, because you've got to get used to it. You've got to sort of become accustomed to driving 70 mile to Hull and 70 mile back every day. There were long days. We weren't getting back till we're waking up at 5, sort of setting off to training, doing long days, coming back. I think some days we'd get back at about 6 o'clock. So, and like I mentioned earlier, to anyone else, that's a normal working day. But in a rugby league world, it's not very often that you'd have to do that if you lived, because obviously the Hull lads, all them, that they'd be waking up a lot later than me and getting back a lot earlier than me. So in a rugby league world, that's a very long day. Do you know what I mean? So, and obviously the training that you're doing is really exhausting. So it takes it out of you. So it were a really tough one, that first pre-season. The content might not have been the hardest I've ever done. In terms of, the running and all that sort of side of stuff. It's that first year anyway. But it was more the travelling, stepping up against the speed of things, into the physicality of things. So I think that's why it's sort of with the hardest point at that time. So, but like you say, after that year, you sort of get used to it then, and then obviously the intensity becomes sort of normal again.
Yeah, I mean, as well, when you signed, Ethan, there was a number of other players who signed at the same time, not least Sean Kenny-Dowell. He saw Dean Hadley, Jez Litton. I mean, they all came into the team at the same time. Did you notice I don't know, a step up in terms of the intensity and the expectations around you as a young lad coming to, or a youngish player coming from Bradford, to say, like, was you accepted into the fold straight away, or did you have to sort of go back to when you first got into the side at Bradford, or was you accepted straight away as, no, Ethan Ryan's a first team player and he's in?
Nah, you sort of had to start again, and I knew that had happened. I knew that I wasn't going to be coming to Rovers and sticking a starting squad number shirt on. Do you know what I mean? It were always going to be that starting that process again, and that were a big sort of factor in my decisions to first come, because I knew that I was going to go from playing, like I said, probably on average about 25 games a year to probably not so many at first. So it were a tough one, but I knew that why not give it a shot? What have I got to lose? You know what I mean? So, and that was the sort of the thing behind it. There were a lot of learning the first couple of years that I spent at Rovers, and I'm really thankful that I got to see stuff in a different way almost under Tony and Mags and Hodge and obviously Stan. It were there were a lot of like different stuff that I learned, and it were like, I'm really thankful to them all, because there's a lot of stuff that I've learned in them years that I still sort of apply in my trade now. So it were good. It were almost sort of, you had to just be a sponge for a little bit, you know what I mean? And just absorb everything around you and all the tips and tricks that everyone's teaching you.
And was it that's it? You got your first, I mean, you got your wrist injury, didn't you? I mean, you played, what, 6 games? Was that the first time you've had that injury?
Yeah, honestly, it's a nightmare. Like them injuries, like I go on about it all the time, and they're not even right now. So it's, we played in Challenge Cup away. I think it was against Leeds, and we got hammered, and I thought I broke like my hand at the time, and it were my scaphoid in my wrist, and yeah, it were a weird one, because you had to go into a cast for just like a normal broken bone and be treated. I mean, the bone, it's tiny, it's only about that big in your wrist, because I think you've got about 8 bones in your wrist, and it's tiny thing, but it turns out that in your body the blood supply to it is really, really bad, so the healing process of it is not always the best. And I got told that at the time, and I think I was speaking to Greg Minikin about it when we first did it, because I think his brother had a lot of problems with his wrists as well, and he was saying, nah, his didn't heal, and I was thinking, surely I'll go in this cast and it'll be fine. And anyway, I did, and came out of it, and it wasn't fine, and I was just really struggling, and it got to the point where I had to go get it looked at again, and it turned out that it hadn't healed. So I had all this time in a cast. I think I actually came back and played a few games in between that, and then I had to then get it grafted, which is obviously where they packed bone from what was my ulnar, I think it was, further down, and they packed the bone and they put a screw through it. So they did that, and it healed. It felt really, really good, and I was really, really happy. Training, did everything I could to get back in the team training wise, and I think the week that I could be fit, we had Wigan at home, and as a team we were playing really well that year, and we had Wigan at home, and I got told I was going to be playing back in team. Really happy, buzzing, and played that game, and I remember I made a break down the right side, and I went to pass a ball back inside, and we ended up scoring, but as I threw the ball, I got tackled, and my other side, so my right wrist, went underneath me, and bearing in mind my other one, my left wrist, my right wrist went underneath me. I just smacked it on the floor, and then in my first game back, I did the exact same injury on the other side. Like, you literally can't write it, and it were the same process again, going a cast. which I was obviously gutted about because I'd come back. I was really happy with where we're at, training wise, physical wise. Like, I thought we were going to finish the year well, all that sort of stuff. And to be told that were going to probably be my last game that year, which in fact it was, were really, really gutting. So I feel like it was a bit of an annoying ride at the start because it were hit and miss, you know what I mean? Where I feel like if I were fit, I'd have been playing, which it's quite annoying really because I'd have liked to have played more games for Rovers, and I feel like I could have got a lot more games out of it. But anyway, I went in this cast and for another 8 weeks, came out of it and didn't feel right on that side either. So we went and had it looked at a few weeks later. Turns out that side needed grafting too. So again, going for the operation, packed the bone out of my arm into the wrist bone and put a screw through it. And then obviously we get to, and that's like a long process. It's like 3 months to recover from a bone graft because you've got to allow time for the bones to sort of mush together and form. Anyway, got to the end of that and it's still, I don't think it were right. Well, I know it wasn't right. But back then, like when I came out of it, I was that sick of being in a cast and being thingy. I just thought I'd tried to get through it, and I did. I played all last year, and with little, never knowing that it won't not healed. You know what I mean? It were almost like it just a bit sore. Never really had like the full range that I had before, or the range that I had in the side that I'd had done and it healed. But I always had just like little problems with it, and so I played, from when I came out of it, I played all like that year, and then I think we first came back with the Hull derby. We played them at our place on the Good Friday. Then I played obviously the rest of that year. That's when I got my most appearances in, and then he sort of took us into this year. So really annoying injuries that you just can't seem to help really. But I just had to take them on the chin and still do what I can. And I'm just happy that I managed to play the games that I did and be involved with the teams that I were at my time there. But like I say, if it weren't for them, I think I'd have played a lot more games for Rovers.
Yeah, and I mean that's a tough injury because a lot of injuries are to do with you can help yourself by building your muscle up around bones, and also your wrist it's not anything you can do, is it? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's a tough one. I mean, how important? I mean, supporters will wonder sometimes when you suffer a serious injury or you're out for a long time, like what the club does to then support you through that period. And I mean, as an individual, I mean, you don't want to be cast aside here. You want to be part of the team and stuff like that. And I wonder what the club do to make you part of it, or the coach does, what Tony Smith does, or to make you part of the team still, so you don't feel like you're not out on your own.
Yeah, so 100%. So Tony were really big on so whenever you want picked or whenever you want if you were injured, he always really liked if you were still there and part of the team. So I really bought into that in like my first couple of injuries that I had, when it didn't heal and stuff. So even if it's just stuff like helping out with training, just like, I don't know, setting up, setting up, helping out, set up drills, just little stuff, you know what I mean, that just keeps you involved. Because you obviously still do your own training, you still do like fitness, still do gym, all that sort of stuff. So it were you just had to sort of help out where you can and sort of don't be moping around the place, basically. Just still be positive, bring everyone's attitude up and still be sort of a motivation to the team, really. And that's what I tried to be. Obviously, the first few weeks, it's hard because you're really good that you're out of the team and you're out of that environment. But I bought into that massively, and he really liked that sort of I could do that. Yeah,
I mean, 2021, it was a funny old season. Rovers finished 6th on win percentage. Of course, played Catalan in the semi-finals. Like you said, you suffered that wrist injury. I mean, 2022, there was lots of high hopes going into that season, weren't they, in terms of what could happen. It sort of it definitely didn't go the way that a lot of supporters really wanted it to. Challenge Cup semi-final. I mean, when you look at that game back, I mean, as a supporter, there was so much expectation going into that game, and it just seemed like there was so many things that just didn't pan out. I mean, 𝗕𝗓𝗏𝗏 with his arm. I mean, I think he had a bigger thing on than Corbin Sims. I mean, on that, Corbin Sims, how does he get away with that? Not wearing that thing on his arm.
I don't know. Yeah.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, massive pad. But yeah, it were. I remember the time it were all happening at, and I came back into the team just before Easter, and obviously we played Hull, went over to Toulouse, beat Toulouse, played 𝗕𝗂𝗱𝗴𝗏𝗏 the week after that, beat them. And we went on like a really good sort of streak of wins where we were in a real. I think it was 7, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
We went on about seven wins, and we went to play Leeds away in at Headingley, and we lost. I think it was 12-0. We lost.
Yeah, I tell you what, mate. I'll be honest. I'll put that down as one of the worst games I've ever seen.
Yeah,
Rovers. It just, for whatever reason, it was just the weather, just everything, just didn't work, did it?
No,
just
it didn't. And it seemed that it was like and I'm pretty sure, if I remember rightly, the semi-final was the week after.
Yeah.
And we were in a place where we were playing very, very, very well, and it were weird. All of a sudden, it just seemed like, and honestly, I don't know what it was down to. It was nothing. I could not put my finger on it. And listen, that night, yeah, we didn't play as best rugby. But then the semi-final, it was weird. I always look back at it and think that Huddersfield had a game plan that day to really tear us apart, and they just executed it perfectly. It's not like every supporter will, like, I'm not saying they don't know rugby as well as us, because a lot of supporters do, but if you just look at the little details that Huddersfield had that day and what they did, like in their game plan, and just repeated it, just rinsed and repeat, and they just broke us down. And we didn't play well as well, which didn't help. So they had a good game plan. We really didn't play well, and we were just devastated because we'd been going so well. We were really confident. Huddersfield were going well, we know that, but what we dished up, and it hurt a lot. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what we learned a lot from in this year's semi-final. Because that year we come away from it, and it were really gutting. And then obviously after that, that's when I think the dip started, and we were just in really bad form for quite a big chunk of the rest of the year, which were a shame, because, like you say, we had a really good group and we'd started the season really well, but it was a shame that we couldn't maintain that.
Yeah, and of course we saw the departure of Tony Smith. I mean, a coach who brought you in to the club. I mean, what was your relationship with Tony Smith? And I mean, I do think he of course, he's gone to that lot, so we don't want to talk about that. But he did play a big part in where we are now. I think he raised standards. He gave belief to the supporters that actually, no, we should be better than where we are, and he did something about it. And yeah, of course, the departure was a bit sour. And I wonder how, like, you felt at the time as well. He brought you into the club, and everything sort of just went a little bit off the rails in it then, and we was in a little bit of, like, I don't know, we was in sort of jeopardy. We didn't quite know what was going on, and I wonder how was you as a player that sort of translated to you as well, because we saw Danny Maggs come in as coach then, and
yeah,
it was just a bit of an uncertain time for everybody.
Yeah. It's funny you should say it, really, but it wasn't actually Tony who brought me in at first, because when I first signed with the club, it were Tim Sheens was still there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, and he were, because he was there just before he left, and Tony came in for the remainder of that year. So when he left, and I came in, I was sort of thinking, oh God, obviously I'm coming in as a player now that hasn't been signed by by Tony, but it turned out that I was sort of a player that he, like a young person who can be developed. Like Tony really likes to do that, and He did that with quite a lot of players, and I don't know. Like I said earlier, I learned a lot from him on how to play. We did a lot of one-to-one sessions where he'd bring me in and we'd have a little look at what I was doing in certain situations and asking me what I was doing here and why should I not be doing it, or why was this good, all that sort of stuff. So it really good, like the detail and the one-to-one that it'd give each player. So yeah, when he left, it was a bit of a weird one really, because it was almost like, well, I felt like I were at a good spot with him, and it's almost like, again, you've got to sort of then start again. You got like under a new coach, so I really enjoyed my time when Magsy came in though, because like I say, I got on with when I mentioned that four earlier who I first came to the club under, like Stanley Jean, Dave Hodgson, Danny Maguire, Tony Smith. I really enjoyed being under all of them and sort of in my first couple of years at the club. And when Mags took over for the rest of that year, it were again really enjoyable. I loved playing under him, and it were a time where it were almost like, because I remember as well, we had so many injuries. It were crazy the amount of injuries we had. Like, I've never seen anything like it. And obviously you think back to that game that we played over at Hull on that last game of the season, and like the team that we had out, it's just madness that the team that we fielded that day and the result that we come away with. So yeah, that back into that year were enjoyable, but it was a shame that year that we couldn't push and do more.
Yeah, it was, and to be fair, mate, you've already preempted what I was going to ask you. I mean, that final game of the season, like, I mean, you played fullback, I think. I mean, you look at that team. I think Minnie was in the halves. I think Phoenix, he was in the halves with him. I mean, you look across the team, and the fact we couldn't also name a full squad for the game. I mean, Hull was shit. Don't get me wrong. They were absolutely off the rails. They'd gone. But where did that? I mean, 𝗟𝗡𝗞𝗦 played the game of his life.
He did, yeah.
He literally limped off. Where did that come from? Where was that desire? Was it the desire to beat Hull, or was it as a group of players saying, "Do you know what? This is our last game as a team. Let's just give it everything."
Yeah, 100%. It was that, because all week. So I remember Mags getting us in and saying, "Look, we've got 16 men this week." He said, "Think of it as you want to think of it. Like, let it play whatever you want to play on it. But ultimately, we've got a derby game this week." And I remember all week on Twitter, it was just like bam, 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 all week, just about how it's going to be it's going to be a battering. It's going to be the biggest result in years. All that sort of stuff. All you're seeing all week, and you don't even go looking for it. It just finds you sometimes. Like all that sort of social media stuff, and you just couldn't stay away from it that week. And I think as a group we just thought, like, sod it, you know what I mean? Honestly, what have we got to lose? And it's funny when Jake Connor played for FC, like, because I know Jake, and like before each game, or like, because we have a couple of like mutual friends as well, and I remember him putting us into a group chat and just saying, what's going to happen this week, all that sort of stuff again. And even before game, Jake were in my ear giving me a load of like stick and that. But honestly, on that day, like, it's one of those things, you put anyone there, and I think would have put up a fight. You know what I mean? It were a weird one, but it were honestly, like, of all games I've played now, I think I've almost played 150 games in my career, and that's easily in my top 5 games, because it were, like I said, nobody had us down going to that game and winning, and that's almost what makes it extra special. And to say it were a derby, and it wasn't just a close win, we absolutely battered them that day. So, and funnily enough, actually, I think it were about 15 minutes into the game, I was getting up off the floor, and I got kicked in my hand on the side that my wrist went right with, and I looked down at my hand, and it was sticking in a direction where it shouldn't have been, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So I've called physio on, and I thought it was my wrist. I said, "Oh, my wrist's gone again. It's gone again." And I was looking down, and he said, "No, it's not your wrist, it's your thumb." And I'm like, "All right." I'm sort of happy that it won a thingy. So
right,
it popped. Well, what we thought, it popped my thumb back in, so like it hurt a little bit. I was like, oh, like cheers. I went to run to get back in because we had the ball at the time and we were attacking their goal line. Went to play carry on, and it just fell out again. And so I was like, I didn't really know what to do. So I called him back on. I said it's falling out again. Turns out I just snapped the base of my thumb, and so we had to strap my hand up. And I played on for the rest of the game because literally if I'd have gone off, I don't even know like how we'd have reshuffled the team. Do you know what I mean? Because we just didn't have we didn't have the personnel to sort of. I mean, we'd have found a way, obviously, but I just thought I'm just gonna have to carry on because, I mean, it were already broken. It wasn't gonna get any worse, sort of thing. So we just strapped it all up, and I played. I think it were 60 minutes with a snapped thumb that day as well. So honestly, it had everything. It was crazy.
I tell you what, though, that I think that shows you probably how much adrenaline plays a big part in the game. That you know, in any other job, if someone snapped the thumb, they'd be off, wouldn't they? But the adrenaline's running through your body. It's almost like that's probably the biggest painkiller. Yeah,
100%. Because like after the game, you think, ouch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As soon as it all starts to wear off a little bit. I mean, to be honest, it was one of those things we had like obviously we did like end of season doing stuff, so you are sort of it doesn't stop for a few days, but certainly after we'd done his end of season trip and come back to actually getting the operation, I get it sorted. Like before the operation, my hand looked like a balloon, and it really hurt. But that adrenaline, it lasts quite a long time as well because you don't actually feel it like rugby games. There's normal rugby games if you go home after, obviously you sore and stuff, but it's only when the adrenaline actually wears off and you can finally get to sleep. When you wake up in the morning, you think like, wow, you know what I mean? That's when you certainly feel it.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about adrenaline, I mean, the whole derby, I ask every player who comes on and does the Heritage Cast about the derby because it's one that every player's, talks so highly about. I mean, you've had some special moments. Lachlan Cooke got the glory, but it was you set him on the way. That goes down as one of the best tries in recent memory for the derbies. It is a special game, isn't it? And for me, as a supporter who goes and watches Rovers all over Wakefield, Castleford, Warrington, St Helens, but when it's the derby, it just all them pale into insignificance. And I wonder, as a player, do you buy into it, or do you try and shelter yourself from it, and not get involved in all the derby? Is it possible to do that?
Nah. I'm so when I were at Bradford, obviously our derby game would have been Leeds, but obviously being where it was, we never got to the opportunity to. And
you made your derby? Was it your debut in a friendly?
It was.
Bradford League friendly.
Yeah. In a J.M.E. Peacock's testimonial game, it was.
Wow, that's a bit of a moniker, isn't it?
Yeah. But like I say, it was a weird one because I only played about 15 minutes, and like I say, we're a friendly. I know there's no such as a friendly game, but it's one of those where, and they don't count, do they? I think like friendlies. It's one of those things where, and I did that. I think I played him the year after as well because I played in Carl Ablett's too, because he had a testimonial game when we played again at Headingley. But I never got to get because our derby then changed to like being against Halifax or something like that. Do you know, like a lot
not
more.
The same though, is it?
No, it's not. But like I said, them games definitely did have their have the times, and there were times where I don't know where there were really good games and all that sort of stuff. But we got to then experience it when we played Leeds in Challenge Cup, and we beat them. When Leeds were like in a really, really bad patch in Super League, and we got them probably just at the right time, and it was weird. I remember the draw being made, and I was sat in my front room, and it were almost like you ever seen Football Factory?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're gonna say.
When they get Millwall, and honestly, and it was like that. Yeah. When we got Leeds, I was buzzing just because it were going to be my first sort of Bradford Leeds, like proper game, and I got to play in it, and obviously we got to win. But then, obviously coming to Rovers, you see like it's one of those derbies that you watch as almost, you know, like when you're an outsider, when you don't play for the club, and they're always like some of the best games that you see. And I remember the year before watching Jimmy score that try corner on Hooter, you know, like that sort of stuff. And but that game was going to be my first derby, and it was my first game back. Because after injury, it took me ages to get back in a team. Tony were telling me that I've got to play reserves, I've got to work on a couple of things, and it took me ages. And he gave me the nod that week, and I was like, oh God, you know what I mean? It was a big one to come back for, and I just remember walking out like that's the loudest that I've heard Craven Park United. Where honestly, it were ridiculous. And obviously the band were playing, coming out, and
the ratings. I mean,
and it were honestly, like I said earlier about my top 5 games, that's in there too, because it were, I don't know, a very special day. 1, because we got the win. 2, because I set that try up for 𝗂𝗡𝗴𝗏, which sort of give us that sort of like little bit of a barrier lead. And I'm just really happy that I come back into the team and we won, and it were like a really, really happy day. It was weird because we couldn't go out or anything or like celebrate, because we had to go to France like literally like the next day, I think it was. On that short turnaround over Easter, so but it were unbelievable. And like I said, that I want to end at year, and they were the one this year. Obviously, I didn't play in it, where we went to their place and beat them well, but they are some of the most special games you can play in, and I'll never forget those games. Obviously, there's some games that come and go that you're a part of, and the good wins and stuff, but them ones are extra special.
I tell you what, as well, though, Ethan. I mean, your mate, Ethan Minchella. Sorry, he seems to get right into the derby.
Well, there's a photo of me, Stars, and Minnie celebrating a try that we're in that game that we played them at their place at the end of the year. And honestly, like, you'd have thought we were all born in Hull, you know what I mean? Like, you can see that it means that much to us. And it's on my Instagram, the picture, and I'll put it up a couple of times. It's on the when I put the post out about leaving. It's one of the photos on there, but you kind of like everyone buys into it. Crooksy, when Ben Crooks were at the club, every week when it were Derby week, he'd come in and that's all he'd shout all week: Derby week, Derby week, Derby week. Like, he'd get everyone involved. Tony, he wasn't a big fan of building it up to be the game that it is. It would have sort of, it's another game, like, we all won all this sort of stuff, but it were he sort of liked to not play it down, but he didn't want us getting like wrapped up emotionally in it and doing stuff out of character. Do you know what I mean? So, but I remember Crooks Hero was the one who were hyping it up, and again, like, that's it. If it needs any outside sort of source to get you hyped up for a game like that, then like you say, you don't think much of it, but you need to be you need to get a little bit of, it needs to come from within in games like that. Do you know what I mean? And certainly I feel like I said earlier, especially our Bradford bus, like, even though we're not from there, we certainly adopted it and took it on board.
Yeah, and it's well appreciated. And you mentioned that 40-0 points to 0 victory over Hull FC in the last season. I mean, it's your final season at the Robins. Huge change going on at the club. Willie Peters coming in as head coach. You want to have to look now to see all the transition in the playing squad, etc., etc. I mean, a fantastic season for the Robins, and you must have been delighted to be part of it, although bittersweet in terms of departing the club, but you still played a huge part in our relative success. You know, Challenge Cup final, Super League semi-final, a fantastic season for the Robins, and I don't know, when you look back at your days at West Bowling to Bradford, them early days at Rovers, finishing bottom of the league in the first season, and to see where the club is now and for you to play a part in it, it must be a fantastic time for you. And obviously now you've got a fantastic move to Salford and your career progresses, and it's a special time for you. Yeah,
100%. And like you said then, sort of, I remember my first year coming in, I think the club signed like 16 players, I think it was. A lot went out and a lot came in, and it was something like that number anyway. And excuse me. I remember like a few left, even the 16 that came in, only a few of them coming on like 1-year deals and stuff, but a few left, a few stayed. And I think if you look at the people who stayed, that's the sort of group that sort of, obviously other people have come in around that, come and gone, but like that sort of group has stayed together now for like 4 years and sort of laid the foundations a little bit, I think, for where the club is at now. And yeah, it's nice to think that we've all been a part of, like you say, we achieved, I think, as a club a lot last year, and I think obviously they'll want to achieve more this coming year. And obviously I won't be there and stuff, and a few other boys have retired and left and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, there's a big change happening, and yeah, I'll always. It's a very like fun place in my heart at the Robins, and I'll always wish them all the best and all that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned top 5 games. Where does that Challenge Cup semi-final feature in that?
That's top 3.
I mean, answer score as well.
If we'd have won, then you know what I mean, it'd have been at the very top. But like you say, you get the opportunity to play at Wembley and all that sort of stuff, and like that's the whole week and all that. It's unbelievable. But yeah, obviously I hadn't spoke about Wembley much, and I've only done it like quite a few times, a few times. But yeah, the game really annoying because in my eyes we played pretty poor, and it's annoying because we turned up a couple of weeks later and we put like 50 odd points on Lee. So that's what made it a lot worse for me. That's what made it like if we'd have gone there, played like mint, played unbelievable and still lost, then fair enough. But we went and didn't play very well and ended up losing, which were really, really disappointing. But yeah, it were a tough one to take. But like you say, the club all wanted to do one better. So
I bet it's funny, Ethan, because as a spectacle for a neutral who's maybe not invested in any of the teams, that have thought that was a fantastic game of rugby league. But you're in the heart of it. You know the game plan, and you know whether it's been executed or not. And you know when mistakes are being made, and I suppose that's the difference, isn't it? And when you look back, you know, maybe a missed opportunity, but I do think these missed opportunities are sometimes the ones that then burn in you to give you the hunger to go the next time. And I mean, you've seen fantastic transition at the club now, and Willie Peters. I mean, one of the things that he did do is a tough pre-season. Was it one of the toughest pre-seasons you've ever done?
Yeah, toughest I've done. Easily. We did. I remember we were going back to sort of the really early mornings again, and like you say, the late finishes. It were one thing that were really big. We were really big on last year was the recovery side of things. So each day after a long day, we'd go have a swim, or we'd have like slots for recovery, because the days were really tough. And then obviously we went to Tenerife, and that took it to a whole new level in terms of the stuff that we did out there. Because I mean, we were all thinking before we went, it can't really get much tougher, but it did, and it were really, really hard. So yeah, it were a really tough pre-season. But like you say, that were what, in my opinion, laid the foundations for us to have like the year that we did, because fitness were never an issue, never. And it might have been in other years, you know what I mean? It were never an issue. And I think what we did in pre-season obviously allowed us to have the year that we did.
Yeah, and then before we finish, I mean, we've seen a few retirements this season: Lachlan Coote, Kane Lynette, Sean Kenny-Dowell. I mean, players who have peaked, you know, their careers have hit the highest levels. I mean, particularly Sean Kenny-Dowell as a captain. He's still remaining at the club, but when you look at players like him, Kane Lynette, and you know, Lachlan Coote, and you know, how do you take in what they do and how they behave around the side, and they must be fantastic people to be able to learn off.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's weird because I don't know. They almost it's almost like you sit down and you listen to people like that who have been there and done it, and if you don't, for me, like it's stupid because they're trying to teach and put forward stuff that they've learned along the way, and you just look at some of the stuff that they've achieved in their career and the careers that them three have had. Like it were really good to sort of be part of a team where you could sit there and learn from them. Like especially my transitions to fullback, Cootie taught me a lot, and for that I'm thankful. You know, like just sort of like I mentioned earlier, Joe, when I first come to the club, almost being a sponge, but your peers can almost teach you as well, and as well as your coaches and stuff like that. So it's but Skids as captain especially, like he just led by example every single week. There wasn't a time where you didn't think he were ever going to do his job. Do you know what I mean? And he did it consistently for the time he were at Rovers, and the way he led the team and motivated the team to do what they do and to lead them to what they've achieved sort of this year and stuff. It were really, really good. And what helps as well is the three of them are like really good blokes. Do you know what I mean? Because there's times where you'll get teammates and you might not always get on with them and or might not be mates like outside of rugby and all that sort of stuff, or like stuff like that. But them three are like genuinely good people and good blokes who you got a lot of time for on and off the field. So I'm just happy that I could have played with them and they were part of my journey as well.
Yeah, and fantastic. And Ethan, I mean, you've got the move to Salford. Are you back in pre-season yet?
No, not yet. So how long have I got left now? What day is it? I've got end of this week and another week, but we've got like little check-in sessions that we'll be doing with the club and stuff like that. And then we then go back in on the 20th. So that's when we'll start. And then we'll go up to Christmas and then obviously back in after the new year. So yeah, different environment, different team, but it's a new challenge and one that I'm really looking forward to sort of being a part of. I know a few boys who are already there, and I've played with them a couple before, and I know 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗴𝗲𝗁, the assistant. I used to play with him at Bradford and stuff, and I've met Rolls quite a few times now. So yeah, I'm just really looking forward to it. It's a fresh start, and I think it's one that I needed in terms of just sort of where I were at in my career and sort of what the future held sort of thing and all that sort of, without going too far into it. But yeah, I'm just really happy that the opportunity's come up now and I can sort of get going with it and let's see what we can achieve.
Yeah. Well, there was one winger who left Rovers to sign for Salford, who's gone on to have an absolutely fantastic career in Super League and Rugby League, 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗴𝗏. And honestly, I wish you all the best. And if you achieve what he's achieved in the game, honestly, mate, you're going to have an absolutely fantastic time. You will go down as one of the fans' favourites for a long, long time, Ethan. It's been an absolute joy and pleasure to watch you playing for Hull Kingston Rovers, and we genuinely wish you all the best.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.